If you exited in 20 instead of 21, yeah, you left some money on the table. If you exited in 22 instead of 21, you lost a lot of money.
Because you've done all these different businesses, and we've talked about on this program before where business is business. How does that separate from real estate? Is it all business, or is like you look at it like, hey, this is a rental property, or how do you translate all these different business opportunities, and how does it integrate or with your real estate mind?
I'll try to answer that in some kind of a coherent answer.
I mean, better than how I asked it.
I'm very simple-minded. Like I don't like an overly cluttered, my money's here and it's here and I got to worry about that. I like to keep it simple. But after I made, a very nice return in the multifamily run-up from 2010 to 2020, I made enough for myself and for my kids and for several generations, and I needed to put it somewhere. And I couldn't really just dump it all back into multifamily. I mean, things were super hot. I needed to exit that space for a while, let it cool down. So I had to educate myself a bit and move it other places. So now I'm in equities. I sell covered calls and I make monthly payments that way. I moved into Bitcoin. I started buying a lot of small businesses because of the cash flow is really, really strong on those. So I had to start educating myself on how the other asset classes work to balance my portfolio. And I'm really glad that I did that, because if I just pushed it back in multifamily in 2020, when I sold everything in 2019, I would be clobbered right now. Like all my contemporary peers that do what I was doing, and they just stuck through it and called me kind of foolish or for running away from the asset class. I'm just like, I sold that asset 10 years ago for $13,000. I bought it for $13,000 a door. I sold it for 40, and now you want me to buy it back for 140,000. Like something is wrong with these numbers. It's literally more than 10 times the price of what I bought it for, the same assets. So I'm not sure if I'm getting to the final answer. You're asking these businesses I'm working on, is it all just the same as real estate? How do I manage them in my mind? It's balancing a portfolio. It's being an asset manager. It's sort of more along the lines of family office thinking. What's their long-term strategy? How to park money to reduce the taxes. It's letting them all kind of intercooperate with each other, balance each other out.
What he just said reminded me back in the REI Expo days. Remember Chris Danefeld?
The
pilot education
the one
teacher guy?
that drove he was like the richest guy there and drove like a Bronco from like 87.
Yeah.
He passed away.
Yeah, he passed away. But I remember part of what he would say in his speech, because he had seen enough downturns, was you need to decide how much the last 5% is worth. And that's kind of what Will was saying. It's if you exited in 20 instead of 21, yeah, you left some money on the table. If you exited in 22 instead of 21, you lost a lot of money, right? Like, I mean, because as soon as the Fed started moving rates in early 22, cap rates went, right? And multifamily just got obliterated. So I personally respect what you just said, because it's like, look, yeah, I could have stayed around for another 5 or 10% increase, but I quadrupled. I'm good. I'm going to be disciplined with my money and my investments, and now it's wealth preservation versus wealth accumulation.
Well, it's also following the money. Like you did single family real estate for what, 15 plus years? And then you, not overnight, but then you started reading the writing on the wall, which is like the paper is the real money.
Yeah.
So now you're a lender.
Yeah.
I mean, you still do real estate, but the real money.
I wish I didn't. Keep telling my wife, like, stop.
But my point being is the real money is the scalability of what you're currently doing versus the single family houses.
Yeah, I mean, look, most.
Not to shit on single family.
No, I mean, look, the bulk of my wealth is still in my single family real estate.
Yeah.
I pride myself on being an asset guy and being able to really look at it from the point of view of I can always say people behind the paper, because I still know what it's like to be the seller or the buyer or the wholesaler or the flipper. I'm like, it's very important that you stay connected to that,
Yes.
the users. But yeah, I mean, look, if I'm going to loan you $200,000 on a $300,000 asset, that I would, if I'm going to loan you $200,000 on a $250,000 home, and that's what I would pay for it, why not loan it to you? Because not only do I have the surety of the asset, but now I've got you and your money and your credit and like as well. So it's like I've de-risked the transaction, and now you're the one that has to do all the hard work, and I can actually multiply and scale.
But my overall point is, say you didn't start Ternus and you stayed in the single family real estate world, and then when you're 50, you're like, I want to exit. And you would have a very comfortable exit.
Correct.
Or you spend the next 5-10 years building Ternus, and then all of a sudden, instead of a comfortable exit, you have a significant exit.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing is like what Will said. I have a business now that produces revenue. You know, I mean, we did over $1 million in revenue in our first year. It's not great, but 8 months, 10 months. But that's without counting the interest income, because all that goes into our fund. So if you were to actually do a revenue recapture from kind of that controlled business, now it looks really good. You start backing out EBITDA, and we did it all without any debt or leverage. It's all just been our own cash. Now we start applying warehouse lines and debt or leverage against it, and now the velocity we have, but also more importantly, the most important thing is I have a business with a leadership team, with an infrastructure and revenue stream that I can sell, that I can say, hey, would you like to look at this on an EBITDA model? If so, here you go.
Yep.
One thing that I alluded to this earlier today when I was talking to General Williams, and the epiphany I had with that conversation was starting with the exit in mind. And I think in single family real estate world, it's you start with how do I get to the next deal? And you never think in terms of starting with the exit. And from that conversation with him, the only way you can exit is if you have the right leadership, the right teams, the right processes, all the roadmaps in place. And if you're just starting, obviously you don't have all that. You're just like, let me just go to the next thing. But like if you start with the exit in mind, which I don't think real estate people generally don't do, because and from my point of view, in my opinion, I think real estate people, they think in terms of buying and holding or flipping and wholesaling and just do it to the next deal, almost like a hit of drugs almost, versus like, hey, what does the future hold?
It's not a business. I mean, they have a job,
Exactly.
and their job is
100%.
rental real estate, flipping real estate, and so they don't think like business people. And yeah, there's no exit in mind whatsoever.
Well, the exit is actually confused with the legacy. I think the bulk of the customers I've worked with in the last 20 years, they believe, just like I did when I got into this, my whole thing was I was gonna have 40 houses free and clear when I turned 40. To me, at that time, that was like more wealthy than I ever imagined I would be.
Sure.
I mean, back then, you were thinking they'd be worth 150,000, not 400,000. But I mean, that was, I'm worth, $8-9 million bucks, and I make $15,000-$20,000 a month.
Yep.
As a 22-year-old Marine, that was a pretty good vision.
Yep.
But, and you just mentioned the legacy you've left your kids and your kids' kids, right? Like, I think people get into it thinking they're going to leave a legacy and not realizing, and again, we're not shitting on single-family real estate, but how many times do we buy houses in this business from the kids that inherited a portfolio, right? Because it was dad or mom's skill set that kept that thing together.
Yeah.
And when they leave it to them, they're just kind of like, yeah, I'll take the money. So I think people need to think about the exits so that they're actually better positioning their family for a real legacy that's not skill dependent.
So with the exit being the topic of conversation, me personally, when I started Harper Belmont, I didn't think of that at all. I was just like, hey, I think it'd be cool. First of all,
It's a great name.
Thank you. It's my last name and my street I live on.
I know.
I was watching Wolf of Wall Street, Stratton, Belmont. That's a cool name.
It reminded me of that.
That's literally why I named it, because I thought Harper Media was too douchey. And I was like, anyway, But when I started this, I wasn't thinking about an exit. I was just thinking it would be cool to have a company and, just start bolting on things. But now that I'm in a much higher level conversations with Tim and the guests on this podcast, or even the people I interact with school, I'm like, maybe I do want to be an entrepreneur. I'm not saying I have any ambitions to sell Harper Belmont, but how do I become more of an entrepreneur? How do I acquire? How do I invest? How do I exit? And having those types of conversations and thought processes. With that in mind, when you do businesses or you invest or you buy or you start, do you think about the exit from the beginning? Or is it, hey, this would be cool, and if you are able to sell it later, that's cool?
I think some naturally lend themselves as an asset class that would lend itself to an exit. I think some other projects that I work on, I think of them more as projects. Like, this is going to be me, my efforts, my time.
Right.
Once I'm done with the project, I'll close it and be done with it. So some assets go that way and others don't well.
Yeah, because I can't imagine and I'm not pejorative on this at all, but like owning a nightclub in the Philippines, that would be cool as shit. And yes, you could probably get your money back and you could sell it and whatever, but I don't think the word exit would ever be equated with that type of business.
So I have it in mind.
Okay.
And just for some feedback, in case no one knows sort of the background on that, after COVID, I mean, the Philippines got flattened. They were locked down for 2 years. So I picked up my first bar. I've been a musician my whole life, so I love music and I love the scene and all that. So I bought my first club out of COVID, coming right out of it at the very end of 2 years, and got it for nothing. A really, really great deal. It opened. It was the only thing open, and so we just crushed it. Like, it was interesting watching my real estate of multifamily portfolio in the United States get beat by a nightclub in the Philippines. Like, it was just kind of mind-blowing, like how well it did.
Really?
And I've been buying ever since. I've been buying distressed deals. And the whole point of what I'm doing is I'm rolling them up. I'm going to buy that one, I'm going to buy that one, I'm going to buy that one. I'm buying my fourth one
Pull together and then sell
next
as a
month
package?
and probably sell it to Chinese or Koreans because they're over there and they have cash and they need to move it. But they fund my orphanages, my children's surgeries, and so like I'm not taking that money, but it is cool, it's fun. But yeah, I did start with sort of the end in mind. I'm like, this one's worth this. That's not valuable. One club can go away. But if I'm building a brand, which I'm building, this one is supported by this one and that one, and then there's merchandise and there's the websites and there's the social media.
Will made me the coolest boss ever because I sent my entire Filipino team bottle service at one of his clubs about a year ago, I think it was.
I remember that.
And I just I think I just Venmo'd you the bill or whatever. So like they walked in, Harper Belmont was on the walls. They had the bottle service, do the Harper Belmont signs. And my VA team, they just felt like they were rock stars for the night. I really appreciate that.
I remember that.
I
That's
am
cool.
not doing that with our team in the Philippines. As a lender, we do not do bottle service, but I love the idea.